Good morning, Title I coordinators. Thank you for joining us for our February Title I webinar, and I'm getting our presentation pulled up here. Let's see, there it is. All right. So for anyone who is a new Title I coordinator, I am Erin Suddeth, and I'm the branch manager of the Title I Part A Support and Improvement branch here at KDE. During this webinar, if you want to submit any questions or comments, those of you who are joining us in Teams, you can just put those right in the chat. Or those of you joining on the media portal, you can send an email to me at erin.suddeth@education.ky.gov. We always save some time at the end for any questions. And if you are on Teams and you'd prefer to use the raise hand feature and then just come off mute at that time, you can do that as well. We will also record and post this webinar on our documents and resources page, as we always do. So that'll be up probably later today or maybe tomorrow, and it'll stay up there for a year. If you weren't able to tune in to January's webinar, make sure that you go check that out. We had some very timely reminders, and then our big focus was on all things equitable services for participating private and homeschool students. So this included a general overview of equitable services, which students are eligible for services, the private school intent to participate, and the consultation process. So this is the time of year when most of our districts are beginning to contact the private and home schools about participation for the upcoming school year. So there's a lot of very timely information in last month's webinar. So looking at today's agenda, we're going to be focusing on, of course, more announcements and reminders. We've been looking every month at the monitoring of the obligation of the current year's funds, making sure you're on track to meet the carryover requirements. We'll touch on all the different topics of the February Title I newsletter in case you missed something. We have information about the final fiscal year 2024 allocations. We have some people from PCG joining us to talk about the next opt-in period for our Title I Next opportunity. And then our main focus is monitoring any open projects. So at first, we've got some announcements. The tentative census poverty and hold harmless percentages for the 24-25 school year are available on the Documents and Resources webpage. This information was mentioned and reviewed in the December webinar, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. If you missed that, be sure to go back and watch it. The tentative hold harmless percentage can be used in conjunction with your final 2024 allocation to begin your planning for the 24-25 school year. Now remember that you can challenge that data if you think there are issues with it. There are only a couple of valid reasons that a district can challenge the data, and those are actually outlined in that document itself. And if you're joining us, please be sure that you are on mute. Thank you. Any challenges that you have about the data are going to need to be submitted directly to SAPI, that's the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates branch at the U.S. Census Bureau. You don't submit those to KDE. We have nothing to do with that. And the deadline to contact SAPI with any challenges is March 13th, so you've got about 2 weeks there. We've also got a new resource available on our Documents and Resources webpage, and that is the Comprehensive Improvement Planning and Title I Part A webinar, and there's also an accompanying PowerPoint that's posted. And this webinar provides an overview of how Title I Part A relates to some of the diagnostic tools in the Comprehensive Improvement Planning process. So the CDIP, the CSIP, needs assessment, etc. Remember that Title I should be reflected in some of those tools. We do review CDIPs, CSIPs, and needs assessments, and some of the other tools as needed when we monitor. Now, some of this information has been shared in some previous webinars, but now it's just all together in one place for easy access for you. The webinar is approximately an hour long, and I definitely recommend you check that out, especially as you start planning and working on all of those diagnostic tools for the upcoming school year. The competitive McKinney-Vento Homeless Children Education Program grant is now open. The grant application due date for that is April 18th by 4 p.m. Eastern. And there's some information on our competitive grants webpage for you. And that includes the actual RFA and the technical assistance webinar recording and answers to questions submitted during that webinar that was done by KDE. Just to kind of give you a little timeline on that grant, any submitted proposals are going to be peer reviewed between about April 20th and May 3rd. Then the awardees will be posted to the KDE website on or around May 23rd. The MOA process will occur during the summer. And then the district plans will be reviewed during June and July. And funding will be available to recipient LEAs on October 1st. So if you have any questions about the McKinney-Vento grant, you can contact Zachary Stumbo. That is our state homeless education coordinator, and his email is linked there on the slide. All right, I think we're all pretty familiar with this table by now. We've been looking at it since the October webinar, but if you are a new coordinator, this table just allows us to review the percentage of the allocation that we recommend being obligated each month in order to have at least 85% obligated by the September 30th, 2024 deadline. Remember, these percentages are not required under law. This is just a recommendation. Using a very general guideline of allocating 5.6% per month. So at this point, by the end of February, approximately 45% of the FY 2024 allocation should be obligated, by which I mean spent or encumbered. So be sure you're taking a look at that with your finance officer. And if you've obligated significantly more or significantly less than that, you just might want to go over some things, ensure accuracy, and determine if any of your plans need to be revised to make sure that you do meet that 85% requirement by September 30th. If you haven't had a chance to look at this month's newsletter, it is posted on our webpage, and we leave all those newsletters posted for 1 year. The topics included in February's newsletter, of course, we had an announcement about that tentative census poverty and hold harmless rate, like I just reviewed. We had an article about initiating contact with private and homeschool officials. We do like to share some of the information that comes out in the ESEA Now newsletter. And the article we shared this month was Tap Federal Resources for Early Parent Engagement to Address Chronic Absenteeism. And then we always include the Coordinator's Year at a Glance. So if you're not currently subscribed, you can do that through the newsletter, or if you just want to reach out to me, I'll add you to the list. And be sure that you're sharing the newsletter articles with any pertinent staff, Title I building principals, maybe other staff who help collaborate with the Title I program. And if any of those people want to subscribe, we can easily add them. You don't have to be a Title I coordinator to subscribe to the newsletter. And our final announcement is about the final 2024 allocations. So these allocations have been uploaded into GMAP for districts whose original applications received KDE Consolidated Consultant Approved status. If your original application has not yet received full Consolidated Consultant Approved status, your final allocation will not be in GMAP yet. So be sure that you go in and address any of the identified issues on the consolidated checklist. Now, this could be from Title I Part A, or it could be from one of the other programs that is part of the consolidated application. So be sure that you address any of those issues and then resubmit that application to KDE as soon as possible so that we can get it approved and then get your final allocation uploaded. The award notifications are available on the federal grants webpage. If you haven't already, go in and make sure that you click Revisions Started at the top of the Sections page in GMAP to begin making revisions to your application. And it's really important to keep in mind that the budget page is not the only page that needs to be updated when your allocation amount changes. So if your final allocation is different than the tentative one that was on your original application, and I think it is for almost all of our districts, you are going to have to go in and make some revisions. In the December webinar, I reviewed the different pages of the application that will need your attention. as well as some reminders about pages that may need your attention whenever the allocation amount changes. So it's really easy to get in a hurry and submit your application after you've just revised the budget page, but additional work is always needed. So don't forget to check the district set aside page, the PPA page, and for those of you serving private schools, check that private school page as well, and make sure that all of those are in alignment with the budget page. And of course, you also need to update Munis accordingly to align with any of those budgetary changes that you've made within GMAP. Those two platforms do need to align with one another. So a change in one is going to necessitate a change in the other. And KDE does recommend going in and just comparing GMAP and Munis on a quarterly basis to ensure alignment. You may have decided in your district that you want to do that more than quarterly, but that is our recommendation. All right, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Jones with PCG to talk about our next Title I Next opt-in period.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us, Aaron. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I am a senior consultant at Public Consulting Group. I may have a few of my colleagues on the line as well, but I'm just here this morning, and you may recognize me if you've already started using the Title I Next solution. But if not, I'd just like to share a few points. So in terms of PCG, our team consists of those of us that are on the screen. And again, I just want to share that as a senior consultant, one of my main goals is connecting with fantastic educators like yourselves. I started out as a classroom teacher 20-something years ago. I was also a Title I instructional coach at two very large schools down in Atlanta, Georgia. I've also been an assistant principal, and now I've been a consultant here at PCG for quite some time. So I share that brief background just to let you know that I've had a close connection to Title I programs for quite some time. And this solution is bared with you in mind in all that you have to do in your roles, as Aaron has mentioned, just quite a few tasks that you have to do every day to support the teachers and the students throughout Kentucky. I may also have Claire and Joanna and Cami on the line. Cami is actually a consultant in Kentucky, so she's very familiar with the landscape there. And then Claire is our implementation lead, who's done a fantastic job helping us build and support the Title I Next solution. Just a little bit about PCG. And Cami, I'm not sure if you are on the line. If you are, go ahead and come off mute and turn your camera on. But if not, I'm happy to go through this slide. So in general, PCG is a company that's been around since the 80s, if you will, and we're always focused on providing solutions that matter. And as you see, we work in education, healthcare, human services, but specifically in education, we've worked with over 6,000 districts, and I've listed out the different areas that we've worked in, including customized curriculum, of course, the management of Title I through the Title I Next solution. You may have definitely heard about us in the special education realm because we have been in that realm for a number of years. We also provide direct student services and strategic planning and program reviews. Now, more specifically to where you all are this morning, Kentucky, we have been providing solutions in Kentucky since 2008. So in the realm of school-based administrative claims, when it comes to Medicaid, again, back to special education, we've done quite a lot of work in Jefferson County with our EdPlan case management system. We also have a solution that involves hiring teachers, and it's called University Instructors. And I know that they are working in Jefferson County as well, trying to fill the need in the void that a lot of us are feeling in different school districts when it comes to hiring and retaining teachers, as well as a behavior tracker system. So I shared this slide just to let you all know that although we may be a little bit new to you all, we've been working around the country and working in Kentucky for a number of years. Regarding Title I Next, we've been very fortunate to partner with Aaron and David and others at KDE to provide Title I Next, which is at no cost to all school districts. So I purposefully bolded that no cost because we know budget constraints, ail us all from time to time. And this is a partnership that is at no cost to individual districts. More specifically, in terms of Title I Next, it's a cloud-based software, so it's not something that you have to download. It's located in the cloud, as most applications are nowadays, and it's really provided to streamline your workflow. So streamline your administration of the Title I programs that you manage, and try to put everything in one hub. It provides compliance monitoring and central office administration transparency. So as schools are working on their compliance areas and having communication with their school districts and with KDE, those streamlines are made, or those swim lanes, I would call them, are made very clear on the Title I Next platform. So a few key features. There is unlimited storage. So from year to year, as you are providing evidence and uploading your requirements, that is stored forevermore until you don't have to worry about losing that from year to year. Title I Next provides the opportunity for multiple approvals. So as you are submitting your documentations and your evidence, and there's a different levels of approval, all that is taken care of within the Title I Next solution. You're easily able to go in and pull status reports and filter your data so that you know what has been submitted and what is yet to be submitted. And that goes into the next bullet, which is there's a compliance calendar. So we've worked pretty hard with Aaron and David to understand your school year and your calendar and where some of those key dates lie. So that's already uploaded into the Title I Next platform. And then with those dates as well, you are provided with, notifications and monitoring alerts so that you're aware of what's coming down the pike. Email reminders is pretty self-explanatory. And then an administrative dashboard so that you are able to see kind of the landscape as to what's coming up, what's due, what's been submitted, and where you're going from there. Within the Title I Next platform and software, we also offer help desk support. So once you are utilizing the platform, should you come across any hiccups or have any questions, we have a live help desk between regular business hours, with the exception of weekends and holidays. But it is not a bot, so it is not as if you are you run into a question and you're prompted with a bot and some canned information. We actually have a real help desk available to provide you with support. So in terms of next steps, I'm really thankful to those of you all who have already started utilizing the Title I Next platform, because our first opt-in period was from January 16th through February 6th. So our first cohort of more than 60, I want to say, or 55 or 60 school districts are already utilizing Title I Next, which is very exciting to us. But coming up next is our second opt-in period, and it is running from March 18th through March 29th. So what we will be doing now and through that window that I have highlighted here is Aaron has been gracious enough to provide alerts in your Monday commissioner's message. Of course, I'm here today at the Title I monthly webinar, and we'll probably come back on subsequent webinars. This information is also provided within your newsletter. We also have a flyer that's circulating around the state just to kind of highlight some of those key points that I listed. And then I also have this QR code. So if you are interested in opting into our second cohort, which I said opens on March 18th, but if you scan this QR code, you can go ahead and put your name on the list now, if you will, and we will provide you with more information as we lead up to March 18th. This is still the open enrollment optional period. So if you log in and you want to just kind of learn more, but you're not, sold just yet, you still have an opportunity throughout that window to let us know that. And then we will also have another opt-in period during the late spring. For everyone who opts in up until March 29th, we'll gather everyone. We send that list to Aaron, and once you are approved, we provide a 2 free virtual training sessions. Each training session carries the same information, so you only have to attend one, and it's only 1 hour long. But my colleague Claire, who I mentioned earlier, actually, demos the system and goes step by step through the Title I Next solution so that you're able to see exactly how to use the program and how it could be beneficial for you. Okay. So I think that's about all I wanted to share this morning. Erin will definitely share any questions that you all may have. Myself and our team, we meet with Erin and David every week. And so if you have questions now or questions later on, she's very great about sending those to me and I can reach out to you. I will also drop my email address and then our general Title I Next email address in the chat so that you can contact me with any questions.
And it looks like we do have one question in the chat. So
Okay.
opting in allows us to try it with no obligation.
So if you would like more information now, let me clarify this a little bit. So if you scan the QR code and you put your information in now, that's just letting us know that you want more information. And there should be a final question that says, do you have any questions? So if that's your question now, you just want to say, hey, I just want more information. I don't want to necessarily opt in. Just go ahead and type that in and I will follow up with you by, sending you a flyer. We also have a demo account. So if you'd like to, go in and kick the tires just a little bit, that's fine. Between March 18th and March 29th, that's when if you put your information there and you don't say, hey, I just want more information, you're like saying, I want to opt in, then we'll assume that that's exactly what you want to do. And opting in means that you're opting in at the district level. And then you're also opting in for the schools that fall underneath your district, because the way the system works and what's really the most beneficial piece is that the district has an opportunity to speak directly to the schools and vice versa. So you can cut down on those, in-person visits, those emails, those text messages, whatever, because you have that line of communication utilizing the Title I Next system.
All right, I don't see any other questions, but if anyone has any they want to put in the chat or email to me or Jennifer, we will make sure that those get answered for you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, so moving on to kind of the main topic for us today, monitoring open projects. In the April 2023 webinar, we took an in-depth look at the Title I Part A period of performance. And we also introduced a new resource in that webinar called the Title I Carryover Information Document. And one of the first things that we talked about in that webinar is that Title I Part A is a 27-month grant. Now, this means that multiple Title I Part A projects are going to be open at the same time, which can be a little bit confusing. So each open project has to be monitored during that entire 27-month period of performance. And this is so that we can ensure a number of things. We want to make sure that all of the funds are being spent in a timely fashion. We also want to make sure that they're being spent in line with the approved application. For those of you who have to follow rank and serve order, we want to make sure that that is happening. Of course, I've already mentioned this a couple times in our different announcements. We want to make sure that there is alignment between GMAP and Munis. And then finally, that any established deadlines, such as the deadline to have at least 85% of funds obligated, we want to make sure that those are met. And it may seem really daunting to keep track of the open projects and all of the deadlines that are associated with each one. However, it is crucial that Title I coordinators work with their finance officers to ensure that all open projects are being closely monitored. So what I kind of like to do for myself is make a little cheat sheet type of table that has all of the open projects and the associated dates that I can just quickly reference when needed, because even I get turned around on all these different dates. So you may want to create your own table or just print this one out and kind of keep it handy at your desk. So let's sort of run through all of the information that is on this table. Up first, we've got the year project column. And the very first item listed in this column, this is the federal fiscal year. Now, I've also included the state fiscal year, which is the fiscal year you see in GMAP. And please note that these years are different. That's very confusing, but unfortunately they are different. Up next is the project number, and that's also what you see in GMAP on your budget page, as well as when you're running those Munis reports. And then finally, we've got the school year on there. I kind of like to have all of that information together because federal fiscal year and state fiscal year are different, and it can be really hard to keep track of which year I'm talking about. Up next is the period of award. So this represents the period that funds are available. And I already mentioned that that is a 27-month period. So when I think about the current year's funds, Project K, if I look down at the bottom, I can use those funds for services, activities, expenditures, et cetera, that occurred between July 1st of 2023 and September 30th of 2025. Now, you'll notice for the federal fiscal year 2021 at the top of the table, I've made some strike-throughs on some of the data. And this is because the U.S. Department of Education approved the waiver that KDE submitted last fall. And that waiver included the extension of the period of availability of funds for several federal programs, including Title I Part A. I did want to leave those original dates on the table just for your reference so you can see where it typically runs through. So we can see that the award period for that Project 310I was scheduled to end on September 30th, 2023. But that waiver that KDE received allowed us to extend that to June 30th of 2024. The 85% obligation deadline, that's that deadline that you need to have at least 85% of funds obligated, again, meaning spent or encumbered, in order to avoid requesting a carryover waiver. So as you can see, there are about 7 months left to meet this requirement for Project 310K funds. All funds spent or encumbered, this is the end of the award period. Again, we see the strike-through text for Project 310I. All funds for that particular project must be spent or encumbered by June 30th of 2024, which is just 4 months away. And then if we move down and we look at the next row, 310J, we've got another deadline in 2024. So all funds for Project 310J must be spent or encumbered by September 30th of 2024. And then our last column is the final federal cash request submission. And this is the last day that you can submit those FCRs to get reimbursed for program expenditures. Now, as the coordinator, you probably aren't the one that's submitting the FCR to KDE. Maybe you are, but it's probably your finance officer or somebody else in the finance office. So incorporating the discussion of that FCR submission during the regular meetings that you're having with your finance officer will really help you stay in the loop. Funds that have not been drawn down after that deadline passes must be returned to the U.S. Treasury. So I'd like to draw your attention to all of the deadlines that are occurring in 2024. Each one of these projects on this table has a deadline in 2024. So for 310I and 310J, it's the deadlines to have everything spent and encumbered, as well as the deadlines to submit that federal cash request. And then for 310K, it's the deadline to have at least 85% of funds obligated to avoid having to request that carryover waiver. So be sure that you have got these dates in your calendar because they will all be here before we know it. So let's look at procedures to kind of monitor this timely spending. All districts have to have some sort of documentation that there is a process they use to effectively monitor the expenditure of funds in meeting that 15% carryover provision. Now, examples of processes may include a narrative just describing the process that you use to regularly oversee the requirement. You may have some minutes from regular meetings that include budget discussions. You may have some written procedures, etc. KDE does check this documentation when a district is selected for monitoring, both consolidated and desk monitoring. Now, the process is more than just a promise saying that the district will ensure that no more than 15% of funds are carried over into the next fiscal year. This process is more akin to step-by-step instructions for how your district will keep that promise. So kind of consider some of the following guiding questions. What documents will be reviewed to track spending? How often are you going to review those documents? Who's responsible for reviewing those? Are there going to be regular meetings that you have, again, say with your finance officer? How will remaining balances be communicated to principals? Is that going to happen via email or at a regular meeting, etc.? So this process could very easily be expanded to include monitoring the spending of funds beyond meeting that 15% carryover provision. We could include information about spending in line with the approved application, as well as spending down all the funds before the expiration date. Some things you might consider incorporating: regular review of the district balances spreadsheet, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, and that regular GMAP Munis comparison that I've already mentioned a couple times. Now, the district balances sheet is something that I don't think we've ever talked about in a Title I webinar, so you may not be familiar with that. So one way to monitor the timely spending of funds in all of the open projects is by reviewing something called the district balances spreadsheet that is sent out by KDE. This spreadsheet shows each district's remaining balance for the different federal grants based on the federal cash requests that have been submitted to date. Now, as it says on the slide, this spreadsheet is sent out to district finance officers. So although coordinators are probably not receiving the email directly from KDE, you can review that document with your finance officer once they receive it. And I've just created a very kind of crude example of what that spreadsheet looks like on the slide. Remember that the workbook itself contains different tabs down at the bottom for the different fiscal years, and Title I Part A is not the only grant included on that spreadsheet. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the correct tab for the year and the correct column for the 310, whatever corresponding letter to the year. So this document allows you to easily see all the remaining amounts to be drawn down for all open projects. So if we kind of look at this here, you can see it will have all of the districts listed on the left-hand side. Then there's going to be a column titled Budget. That is your allocation amount, the total amount you have available for your budget. Expenditures, that is going to be the amount that you have drawn down using those federal cash requests. And then the balance is the amount that is remaining to be drawn down through future federal cash requests. It's important to remember that the spreadsheet shows the amount that's been drawn down, not the total amount that has been obligated. For the total amount that's been obligated, you'll need to refer to your Munis budget report. So in an effort to further support districts in meeting the carryover limitation requirement and ensuring that all funds are being spent in a timely fashion, what we at KDE have been trying to do is increase the number of regular reminders that we're providing you regarding these different requirements. And I've divided these reminders into two categories. And the first is group reminders. These are reminders that are issued to all districts. So I've already mentioned incorporating obligation of funds and the open projects quick reference table slides into webinars. So again, we won't be taking in-depth looks at those every single month. The goal is just to ensure that districts are aware of those goals and that they are monitoring their spending. You're also going to be seeing reminders in some of our monthly newsletters, and of course, some direct emails from me to all of the coordinators. The next category is reminders that will be emailed to districts on a more individual basis. So what I'm going to be doing, and kind of have been doing for a few months now, is using that district balances spreadsheet to provide additional reminders and support to districts regarding the spend down of funds. So in terms of carryover limitation reminders, again, first of all, I feel like I can't say this enough. The district balances spreadsheet shows the amount of funds that have been drawn down, not the amount obligated. The total obligated is going to be what's on your Munis report, but I don't have access to that. So what I'm doing with that district balances sheet is prior to that September 30th deadline, districts that have drawn down less than a certain percentage of funds are just going to receive a reminder email from me. Now, just because you haven't drawn down a certain percentage of funds doesn't mean that the funds haven't been obligated. Maybe you have got some things encumbered for some future purchases, or you have already paid something out, you just haven't actually submitted the federal cash request for your reimbursement yet. So all this email is a cue for you to go in and check Munis and make sure that you either have already obligated that 85% or you're on track to obligate it by September 30th. Similarly, after that September 30th deadline, districts that have drawn down less than 85% are just going to get a follow-up email from me asking for confirmation that they didn't need a carryover waiver. In terms of spending prior to the end of the grant period, as the end of a grant period approaches, you'll receive an email informing you that there are funds remaining to be drawn down. Now, in the time between when the report that's used to create the district balances spreadsheet is run and when I actually send you the email, the district may have paid additional bills, they may have submitted additional federal cash requests, et cetera. So it could be that the amount that I reference in my email is a little bit different than what you have in Munis, because I won't be working quite in real time like you are with Munis. So again, I want to emphasize that the individual emails are not punitive in any way. They are just another level of support to help all of our districts meet program requirements. All right, does anyone have any questions? I don't see any in the chat yet, so let me check email. I'm not seeing any on my email. Right, well, if you think of something later, of course, you can email your Title I consultant, or you can email me and we'll be happy to get you an answer. So our next webinar date is going to be Thursday, March 28th at 10 a.m. Eastern, as always. So mark your calendar for that. I always like to remind you at the end of the webinar that we're always looking for your feedback and want to learn what kind of topics you'd like to see in newsletters and webinars and things like that. So if you have any comments or ideas, you can submit those through our optional and anonymous webinar feedback survey. That is in the most recent Title I newsletter. It should also be in the email reminder about today's webinar that I sent out. And I do want to add a little caveat. I've not added this before. If you have specific questions about today's webinar and anything that's been shared, or just Title I in general, be sure that you send those either to your assigned consultant or to me. I have seen a few specific questions submitted via the survey recently, and I haven't been able to respond to whoever submitted those because it is an anonymous survey, so I don't have your email address or anything. I also don't check that feedback survey every single day. I do it more on a monthly basis. All right, and I'm going to do a last check for questions. All right, I don't see any, so thank you for joining us today, and we will see you on the March webinar.